The stars had watched humanity for a long time. They watched when humans first left their blue planet. They watched when humans met other species among the Black Void. And they watched when the Galactic Council welcomed humanity as a junior member. 120 years ago, Admiral Park Jun-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Will, and stared at the stars through the massive window. He was 53 years old. His hair had turned gray at the temples. His face carried lines from decades of service, but his eyes remained sharp, and his mind remained sharper. He had served the fleet for 30 years. In that time, he had learned one simple truth. The galaxy did not respect humanity. The elder races saw humans as children playing at being adults. They smiled at human ambassadors. They nodded at human proposals. And then they did whatever they wanted. JUNHO had grown tired of smiling back. On the council capital, Ambassador Yuna faced the 12 elder races once again. She was 41, with black hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her voice was calm and clear as she spoke to the massive chamber. "The colony of New Hope is under attack," she said. "Valkyrie raiders have been bombing civilian centers for 2 days. We request immediate military assistance from the Council Defense Fleet." The chamber was silent. 12 alien species sat in their elevated seats, looking down at the human woman. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had skin in colors humans could barely name. All of them shared the same expression: boredom. High Counselor Mekathos of the Rethany leaned forward. He was ancient, his gray skin wrinkled like old paper. "The Valkyrie Dominion operates outside Council jurisdiction," he said slowly. "This is a regional matter. Humanity must handle its own disputes." Yuna felt her hands shake. She hid them behind her back. "There are 240,000 people on New Hope. Men, women, and children. They are dying right now while we speak." "Then perhaps," said another counselor, "humanity should have built better defenses." Light laughter rippled through the chamber. Yuna stood completely still. She had represented Earth for 11 years. She had heard insults before. She had swallowed her pride before. But something broke inside her at that moment. Something that would never heal. "I understand," she said quietly. "Thank you for your time." She walked out of the chamber with her head held high. 3 days later, New Hope fell silent. Captain Minho was 29 years old. He commanded the destroyer Swift Current, a small patrol ship assigned to the border colonies. When the distress call came from New Hope, he pushed his engines beyond their limits. He arrived 18 hours after the last transmission. He was too late. Minho walked through the ruins of the capital city with a recording device in his hand. The buildings were burned shells. The streets were covered in ash and debris. Bodies lay everywhere. He saw a woman still holding her child. He saw an old man who had died trying to shield his family. He saw things that would visit him in nightmares for the rest of his life. The Valkyrie had not just attacked. They had enjoyed it. They had taken their time. Minna recorded everything. Every body, every burned home, every piece of evidence. His hands were steady even as tears ran down his face. Above the planet, the Council observation fleet hung in space. They had watched the attack. They had done nothing. Their orders were clear. Do not interfere in regional disputes. Minho looked up at the sky and made a silent promise to the dead. On Earth, President Kang Tai-ho watched the recordings in his private office. He was 60 years old, a former military strategist who had spent his career planning for wars he hoped would never come. His face showed no emotion as he watched the footage from New Hope. When it ended, he sat in silence for a long time. His aide knocked softly. "Sir, Ambassador Yuna has returned. She wishes to speak with you. Send her in." Yuna entered. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red. Her hands still shook, but her voice was steady. "I have failed them," she said. "I've failed everyone." Tai-ho shook his head slowly. "No, the Council failed them. You did everything possible. It was not enough." Oh, the President agreed. It was not. He stood and walked to the window. Earth hung in the darkness, blue and beautiful. Do you remember what I told you when you first became ambassador? Yuna nodded. You said that diplomacy is the art of patience, that humanity must earn respect through time and good faith. I was wrong. Taiho turned to face her. We have been patient for 120 years. We have shown good faith for 120 years. And they let our people burn because they think we are weak. He pressed a button on his desk. A holographic display appeared, showing military deployments across human space. But the numbers were different. The ship counts were higher. The technology ratings were far beyond what the Council believed humans possessed. Yuna stared. What is this? The truth, Taiho said. For 80 years, we have hidden our real capabilities. We smiled and bowed and let them think we were harmless, because we hoped they would change. We hoped they would treat us fairly. They will not change. They have made that clear. Yuna looked at the display. What happens now? You will return to the Council. You will deliver a message. And then humanity will remind the galaxy why they should have been kinder. 1 week later, Ambassador Yuna stood before the Galactic Council for the last time. The chamber was full. All 12 elder races had sent their representatives. They expected another polite request. Another humble plea. They were wrong. 120 years ago, Yuna began, humanity joined this council with hope. We believed in cooperation. We believed in fairness. We believed that the elder races would guide us with wisdom and compassion. We were fools. Murmurs spread through the chamber. You watched our colony burn? You heard our children scream, and you laughed. Her voice did not shake. Her eyes did not waver. You have taught us a valuable lesson. In this galaxy, the weak are meat for the strong. We thank you for this education. She straightened her shoulders. The United Earth government hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council. All treaties are void. All agreements are cancelled. All diplomatic relations are severed. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Counselors shouted at each other. Guards moved toward Yuna, then stopped, unsure of their orders. Yuna smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. You thought we were weak because we were kind. You thought we were harmless because we were patient? She turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, she stopped and looked back. Humanity withdraws. And humanity remembers everything. The doors closed behind her. The galaxy would never be the same. The news spread across. The galaxy like fire through dry grass. Humanity had withdrawn from the Galactic Council. Every news station, every communication network, every planet buzzed with the story, and everywhere the reaction was the same. Laughter, the elder races found it amusing. Humans controlled only 40 star systems. The smallest elder race controlled 300. The largest controlled over 1,000. What could humanity possibly do alone? Let them sulk, said High Counselor Mekathos to his advisors. They will come crawling back within a year. They have no choice. The Valkyrie Dominion was not content to wait. Their supreme commander looked at the star maps and saw opportunity. Humanity had insulted the galaxy with their dramatic exit. Someone needed to teach them a lesson. The Valkyrie would be happy to provide that education. They assembled a war fleet, 2,000 ships, battle cruisers, destroyers, carriers filled with fighters. It was the largest Valkyrie force in 3 centuries. More than enough to crush the pathetic human military. The fleet set course for the Kepler line, the boundary of human space. Their mission was simple. Burn a few colonies. Capture some prisoners. Force humanity to beg the Council for help. Everyone would see that humans were nothing without their betters. Admiral Junho received the intelligence report on his flagship. 2,000 Valkyrie ships. Heading straight for human territory. He read the numbers twice, then smiled. Finally, he said, President Kong addressed humanity in a system-wide broadcast. Every human world stopped to listen. Every ship, every station, every outpost tuned in to hear their leader speak. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, Taiho began, for 120 years, we have lived under the shadow of the Galactic Council. We have accepted their restrictions. We have followed their rules. We have hidden our true strength because we hoped for peace." He paused. Behind him, images began to appear. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Weapons that glowed with strange energy. Technology that made Council's standard look like ancient history. That time is over. Dr. Sujin stepped forward. She was 55, with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. She had led Project Horizon for 20 years in complete secrecy. Now, finally, she could show the galaxy what humanity had built. "Our new faster-than-light drives are 3 times faster than anything the Council possesses," she explained. "Our shields can withstand plasma bombardment that would destroy Council battleships in seconds. And our weapons." She smiled. "Our weapons can crack planets." The broadcast showed footage of tests. A single human cruiser destroying a Council-standard battleship in one shot. A fighter squadron moving so fast that tracking systems could not follow. A weapon called the unfired cannon turning an asteroid into dust. "We did not want war," President Kane continued. "We wanted to live in peace. But peace requires 2 sides willing to respect each other. The Council has shown they will never respect us. So we will teach them to fear us instead." Across the galaxy, the laughter stopped. Admiral Junho waited at the Kepler line with 200 ships. His fleet was tiny compared to the Valkyrie armada. Any sane commander would have retreated. But Junho was not interested in retreating. "Sir," his tactical officer said. "Enemy fleet dropping out of faster than light in 30 seconds. All ships, hold position. Do not fire until I give the order." The Valkyrie fleet appeared in a flash of light. 2,000 ships spread across space like a swarm of metal insects. Their commander broadcasts an open message. "Human vessels. This is Supreme Commander Telvox of the Valkyrie Dominion. You are outnumbered 10 to 1. Surrender now, and some of you may survive to serve as examples." Junho opened a channel. "This is Admiral Park Junho of the United Earth Navy. I have a counteroffer. Turn around and go home. Some of you may survive to warn others." Telvox laughed. "Brave words for dead men. All ships attack." The Valkyrie fleet surged forward. Thousands of weapons charged. Fighters launched from carriers. It was a wave of death rolling toward the tiny human formation. Junho watched them come. He waited until they were fully committed. Then he gave one quiet order. "All ships, fire." 200 human vessels unleashed their weapons at once. Beams of white-hot energy cut through space. They passed through Valkyrie shields like they were not there. They melted armor like ice in summer sun. Ships exploded. Then more ships exploded. Then more. The Valkyrie formation collapsed into chaos. Commanders screamed orders that no one followed. Ships tried to retreat, but human vessels were faster. They hunted down fleeing enemies with cold precision. Supreme Commander Telvox watched his fleet die around him. His flagship shook as human weapons tore through its defenses. He had time for one last thought before the end. This was not possible. The Battle of Kepler Line lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 2,000 Valkyrie ships were burning wreckage. Not a single human vessel had been lost. Admiral Junho looked at the debris field. He felt no joy, only cold satisfaction. "Send the recording to every news network in the galaxy," he ordered. "Let them see what happens to those who attack humanity." President Kang broadcast again. This time, the galaxy watched with very different emotions. "You have now seen what we can do," he said. "The Valkyrie sent 2,000 ships against 200. They lost everything. We lost nothing. This is not luck. This is not trickery. This is simply who we are." The footage of the battle played behind him. Ships dying. Fleets crumbling. The complete and total destruction of an enemy that had expected easy victory. The Galactic Council stood idle. While our children burned on new hope. 240,000 innocent people died because the Council decided we were not worth protecting. We will not forget their faces. We will not forget their names. We will not forget who let them die. His voice hardened into steel. This is not a request for justice. This is a declaration of war. Every council race that voted against helping New Hope is now our enemy. Every species that laughed while our people suffered will learn why that was a mistake. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, panic spread. The Rithani Collective began emergency military production. The Torvani Empire called up reserves that had not trained in centuries. The Velka Dominion, having lost most of their fleet, begged the Council for protection. High Counselor Mekthos called an emergency session. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Elder Races faced a real threat, and they had no idea what to do. This must be a bluff, insisted Counselor Vernak of the Torvani. No species advances this quickly. They must have stolen the technology. From whom? Asked another counselor. Who has technology like this? No one had an answer. In his private chamber, Counselor Torvax of the Rithani sat alone. He was old, even by Rithani standards. He had served on the council for 60 years, and he remembered things that others had forgotten. He remembered voting against humanity joining the council. Not because he hated humans, but because he knew how the elder races treated junior members. He had tried to warn them. They did not listen. He remembered watching the vote on New Hope. He had argued for intervention. He had been overruled. The others were too proud, too comfortable, too certain of their power. Now their pride would cost them everything. Torvax looked at the star maps. Human fleets were already moving, not randomly, not emotionally. They struck with surgical precision at targets that mattered. Shipyards, fuel depots, communication relays. This was not the rage of wounded animals. This was the cold calculation of predators who had planned their hunt for decades. The elder races had made a terrible mistake. They had confused kindness for weakness. They had confused patience for fear. They had pushed humanity until humanity pushed back, and now the galaxy would burn. The war had begun, and the galaxy was not ready. Human fleets struck at 14 locations on the same day. The timing was perfect. Not a single attack came late. Not a single target was missed. Council forces scrambled to respond, but by the time they arrived, the humans were already gone. Only burning stations and broken ships remained. Lieutenant Yunji gripped the controls of her fighter as her squadron approached the Meridian shipyards. She was 26 years old, with short black hair and eyes that never seemed to blink during combat. Her call sign was Ghost, and she had earned it. All wings, stay tight, she ordered. We hit the construction bays first, then the fuel storage. In and out in 6 minutes. The Meridian shipyards were the largest in council space. 400 warships sat in various stages of construction. If completed, they would form the backbone of the council's counteroffensive. They would never be completed. Youngji's squadron dove through the defensive grid. Enemy fighters rose to meet them, but human ships were faster, more agile, deadlier. Yunji destroyed 3 enemies before they even finished launching. Her squadron swept through the shipyards like a storm. Construction bays exploded. Half-built warships became twisted metal. Fuel storage tanks detonated in chains of fire that lit up the entire sector. The Meridian shipyards, pride of the Torvani Empire, died in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. All wings report, Yanji called as they flew clear of the destruction. She had lost 2 pilots, 2 friends who would never go home. She recorded their names in her heart and kept flying. Commander Daewon led the Ghost Division, special operations fleet that did not officially exist. They flew ships painted black, with no markings, no identification. They struck from nowhere and vanished without trace. Their target was the Council's primary intelligence hub, a station hidden in a nebula that the elder races believed was impossible to find. They were wrong. Human intelligence had known its location for 40 years. Daewon was 43, with a face that was impossible to remember. He had spent his entire career in the shadows. This was his greatest mission, and no one would ever know his name. His team infiltrated the station through maintenance tunnels. They moved like ghosts, taking out guards with silent weapons. Bypassing security systems that the Council thought were unbreakable, in 22 minutes, they reached the main data core. "Download everything," Dewan ordered. The files were massive. Centuries of classified information, diplomatic secrets, military plans, and something else. Something that changed everything. Dewan read the files as they downloaded. His expression did not change, but inside, cold fury built. The Council had not simply neglected humanity. They had actively sabotaged them. Trade agreements designed to fail. Technology exchanges that were secretly monitored and restricted. Even the raiders who attacked human colonies were sometimes funded by Council races who wanted to keep humanity weak. "Send this to command immediately," Dewan said, "and prepare a broadcast for every news network in the galaxy." The evidence spread like a virus. Every species with access to galactic news saw the truth. The Council had lied. For over a century, they had worked to hold humanity back while pretending to be fair. The reaction was immediate. On a dozen minor species worlds, protests erupted. The Hollow, a small species with only 20 systems, had been treated almost as badly as humans. Their government quietly contacted Earth and offered intelligence about Council fleet movements. The Bentari did the same. So did the Orcs, and half a dozen others. Species that had suffered under Council arrogance for centuries saw humanity not as aggressors, but as liberators. Finally, someone was fighting back. Admiral Junho reviewed the intelligence from their new allies. The Council was struggling to coordinate. The elder races had not fought a real war in 3,000 years. Their generals studied ancient tactics. Their soldiers trained for parades, not combat. They outnumbered humanity badly, but numbers meant nothing if they could not use them properly. "They are trying to mass their fleets at the Torvani border," Junho observed. "They think we will strike there next." "Will we?" asked his tactical officer. Junho smiled. "We will strike everywhere else first. Let them wait and wonder. Let their morale crumble. When they are tired and confused, then we will show them what we can really do." The Council High Command met in emergency session. High Counselor Mekthos looked older than ever. The war was only weeks old, but already the losses were staggering. Shipyards destroyed. Supply lines cut. Communication networks in chaos. "We must negotiate," said Counselor Vranok. "This cannot continue." "Negotiate." Mekthos shook his head. "They do not want negotiation. They want blood." "Then give them blood," shouted another counselor. "Execute the Velkari commanders who attacked their colony. Offer compensation. Anything. You think that will satisfy them?" Counselor Torvak spoke quietly, but everyone listened. "We let 240,000 of their people die while we watched. We laughed at their ambassador. We told them they were not worth protecting. No amount of money will buy forgiveness for that." Silence filled the chamber. "Then what do we do?" Mekthos asked. Torvax looked at the old High Counselor with something like pity. "We fight, and we lose. And we pray they are more merciful than we deserve." The Valkyrie homeworld hung in space, surrounded by orbital stations that represented centuries of wealth and power. Admiral Junho's fleet appeared without warning. The Valkyrie Defense Force was small. Most of their ships had died at the Kepler line. Junho did not attack the stations. He did not bomb the planet. He simply took position and waited. The Valkyrie government sent a frantic message. "What do you want?" "We will give you anything." "I want you to understand something," Junho replied. "I could destroy your civilization right now. Every station, every city, every living being on your world. I could end you with a single order." He let the silence stretch. "But I will not, because we are not like you. We do not slaughter helpless people for entertainment. We do not murder children to prove our strength." His voice hardened. "Remember that. Remember that when you were at our mercy, we showed you mercy you never showed us." The human fleet withdrew. The Valkyrie were left alone with their fear and their shame. Across the galaxy, the story spread. Humanity could have taken revenge. They chose not to. Lieutenant Yunji heard the news in her ready room. She thought of the two pilots she had lost. She thought of new hope. She thought of mercy given to those who deserved none. She did not agree with the Admiral's choice, but she understood it. Humanity was fighting for more than revenge. They were fighting to prove they were better than those who had wronged them. Commander Dewan received new orders. More targets, more missions. The war would continue until the Council surrendered or was destroyed. Either way, he would do his duty in the shadows. The Ghost Division prepared to strike again. The wolves were loose. The galaxy had nowhere to hide. 8 months had passed since humanity declared war. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Human forces now controlled 31% of former Council space, not through mass destruction, not through genocide, but through precise strikes that collapsed infrastructure and forced surrender. When worlds fell, human administrators arrived with food, medicine, and engineers. They rebuilt what they had broken. They fed the hungry. They healed the sick. Minister Hannah led the reconstruction efforts. She was 52 with gentle eyes that hid a will of iron. She had spent her career in disaster relief. Now, she faced the greatest disaster in galactic history. The people on these worlds are not our enemies, she told her staff. They are victims of governments that treated them like property. We will show them something better. On the conquered worlds, alien civilians watched in confusion. Council propaganda had told them humans were monsters, savages who would eat their children and burn their cities. Instead, they found doctors who treated their sick without asking for payment, engineers who repaired power grids that their own governments had ignored for decades, soldiers who shared their rations with hungry families. A Torvani child approached a human soldier one morning. "Are you going to hurt us?" she asked. The soldier knelt down to meet her eyes. "No, we are going to make sure no one hurts you again." Word spread, slowly at first, then faster. The humans were not what the Council said. The humans were kind. The humans were fair. And slowly, quietly, the populations of conquered worlds stopped fearing their occupiers. Fleet Admiral Nari was 34 years old, the youngest admiral in human history. She had black hair streaked with early gray from stress. She commanded the final push toward the Council capital, and she carried the weight of that responsibility every moment. "The Council has assembled everything they have left," she told her captains. 12,000 ships. Every race has contributed what they can spare. This will be the largest fleet battle in 3,000 years. Her officers studied the projections. 3,000 human ships against 12,000 Council vessels. The numbers were bad, but they had faced worse odds before. "Cannot match them in quantity," Nari continued. "But we exceed them in everything else. Our ships are faster, stronger, and better armed. Our crews are trained for real combat. Most importantly, we know why we are fighting. They are fighting because they were ordered to. We are fighting for 240,000 souls who deserve justice." The Council fleet gathered at the Golden Threshold, a region of space near the capital that had served as a defensive point for millennia. Their commanders were the best the elder races could offer, which was not saying much. They had studied tactics that were ancient when humans still lived in caves. "They will come at us head-on," predicted the Council's Supreme Commander. "Humans are emotional. They fight with passion, not strategy." He was wrong. Human forces arrived in 3 waves from different directions. They did not charge into the Council formation. They circled, probed, tested weaknesses. When they found gaps in the enemy defenses, they struck with overwhelming force, then withdrew before reinforcements could arrive. The Battle of the Golden Threshold lasted 6 days. On the first day, human raiders destroyed the Council's supply ships. The massive fleet began to starve for fuel and ammunition. On the second day, electronic warfare units scrambled Council communications. Commanders could not coordinate. Ships fired on friendly vessels by accident. On the third day, Admiral Neri led the main assault. Lieutenant Yunji flew in the vanguard. Her squadron had become legendary. Ghost Squadron, they called them. Wherever they appeared, enemy ships died. She had lost count of her kills. She tried not to think about it. Council dreadnought, breaking formation, her wingman reported. It is heading for the Admiral's flagship. Yoonji saw it. The massive vessel was ignoring everything else, pushing through the battle with single-minded determination. Someone on that ship had decided that killing the human commander would turn the tide. They were probably right. All fighters, follow me, Yoonji ordered. We stopped that ship. Her squadron dove toward the dreadnought. Defense turrets filled space with deadly fire. Fighters exploded around her. She kept flying. The dreadnought grew larger and larger in her view screen. Ghost Leader, pull back, someone shouted. You cannot survive that defense grid. Maybe not, Yanji replied. But I can survive long enough. She pushed her engines beyond maximum. Her ship screamed warnings at her. She ignored them all. The dreadnought's bridge was straight ahead. One shot. That was all she needed, her weapons locked on target. For New Hope, she whispered. For the 240,000, I regret nothing, she fired. The dreadnought's bridge exploded. The massive ship began to tumble out of control, crashing into two other council vessels. Yoonji tried to pull away, but the explosion caught her ship. Systems failed. Engines died. She felt the heat as fire filled her cockpit. Her last thought was of home. Admiral. Young-ho received word of Yoongi's death in the middle of the battle. He stood very still for a long moment. Then he wiped his eyes and returned to command. Continue the attack, he ordered. His voice did not shake. Win this for her. On the sixth day, the council fleet broke. Ships surrendered in waves. Others tried to flee and were caught. The rest died fighting for a cause they no longer believed in. When it was over, human forces surrounded the council capital, the birthplace of galactic civilization, the center of power for 3,000 years. One order would turn it to ash. Admiral Nari contacted President Kong. Sir, we have one. Awaiting your instructions, there was a long pause. Then Taiho spoke. Hold position. Do not attack. We will offer terms. The terms were simple. The old council would dissolve. A new assembly would form with equal representation for all species, young and old alike. Those who enabled the New Hope massacre would face trial. In return, humanity would not destroy the capital. They would not continue the war. They would help rebuild what they had broken. High Counselor Mekthos received the terms in his chamber. He was alone. His allies had fled or surrendered. His power was gone. Everything he had built over centuries of careful manipulation had crumbled to dust. They should destroy us, he said to himself. I would, in their position. But they were not him. They were something else. Something he had never understood. Something that terrified him more than any weapon. They were human. The 12, what remained of them, voted to accept the terms. They had no choice. But more than that, they had lost the will to fight. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed too far. And they had seen what humanity chose not to do when given the chance. That mercy haunted them more than any defeat. Admiral Junho stood on his bridge as the surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. He thought of Lieutenant Yoonji. He thought of Captain Minho, who had walked through the ruins of New Hope. He thought of Ambassador Yuna, who had stood alone before the council and told them the truth. 847 ships lost. 180,000 soldiers dead. The cost of justice was measured in blood and tears. JUNHO wept for the first time in 30 years. The war was over. The real work was about to begin. The reformed Galactic Assembly rose from the ashes of the old council. It was not perfect. Nothing built by living beings ever was. But it was better. Every species had equal voice. Every world had equal protection. No one would be abandoned to die while others watched. Ambassador Yuna became the first president of the assembly. She stood at the same podium where she had announced humanity's withdrawal. In the same chamber where the elder races had laughed at her. Now she looked out at representatives from over 100 species, young and old alike, and saw hope. We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, she said, but as equals. The old ways brought only suffering. The old lies brought only war. Today we choose a different path. Today we choose truth, fairness, and respect for all who breathe.
Oh.
The chamber applauded. Even the elder race representatives joined in, though some did so with shame in their eyes. Admiral Junho retired 6 months after the war ended. He was too tired for more service. He had given the Navy everything he had. Now he wanted peace. He chose a quiet colony world far from the old battlefields. He built a small house near a lake. He planted a garden. He learned to cook. Simple things that he had never had time for during the decades of service. Every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of the Golden Threshold, he traveled to a memorial station orbiting New Hope. Lieutenant Yunji's name was carved into a wall, along with 179,000, now 999 others. All the humans who had died in the war. All the souls who had paid the price for a better galaxy. Junho would stand before her name for hours. Sometimes he spoke to her. Sometimes he simply remembered. He never forgot her last words. For New Hope. For the 240,000. I regret nothing. Neither did he. Captain Minho was now Admiral Minho, commander of the Joint Human-Alien Peacekeeping Fleet. He had changed since walking through the ruins of New Hope all those years ago. The anger had faded. The grief remained, but it no longer burned. He had learned that vengeance was not justice, that true strength came from protecting others. His fleet patrolled the borders of the reformed territory. They responded to distress calls from any species. They delivered aid to struggling worlds. They hunted pirates and raiders without regard for their race. Under his command, the peacekeepers became a symbol of the new order. My ships fly for everyone, he told his crews. Not just for humanity, not just for the species we like. For everyone who needs help, that is what we fought for. That is what our friends died for. Never forget it. President Kang Taiho stepped down after one term in office. He believed that peacetime needed different leadership than war. His last act was to write his memoirs, a small book that became required reading in schools across human space. We did not want war, he wrote in the final chapter. We wanted dignity. When they denied us one, we gave them the other. But dignity through violence is a bitter victory. Our true triumph came afterward, when we chose to rebuild rather than destroy, to heal rather than punish, to extend the hand of friendship to those who had been our enemies. That is what separates justice from revenge. Dr. Sujin dismantled the Sunfire cannons herself. She took apart the weapons that could crack planets one piece at a time. The technology was locked away in vaults that required codes from 12 different species to open. She hoped they would never be needed again. We built these because we had no choice, she explained to her students. But weapons should not define us. Science should serve life, not end it. Remember that, whatever you create in the future. Commander Daewon simply vanished. One day he was there, the next he was gone. No records existed of his real name. No photographs survived. The Ghost Division was quietly disbanded. Its members returned to normal duty with new identities. Some said Daewon became a farmer on a distant colony. Others claimed he opened a small restaurant in a city that had no connection to military matters. A few believed he was still out there, watching from the shadows, ready to serve if humanity ever needed him again. The truth was never discovered. That was exactly how he wanted it. Minister Hannah received the first Galactic Peace Prize for her humanitarian work during and after the war. She accepted it with grace, then donated the monetary award to refugee relief efforts. Peace is not the absence of war, she said in her acceptance speech. Peace is the presence of justice, compassion, and care for one another. We have stopped fighting. Now we must start healing. That work never ends. She continued her efforts until her retirement, overseeing reconstruction projects on 47 worlds. When she finally stepped down, alien children who had grown up under her care wept and called her grandmother in a dozen different languages. Counselor. Torvax became an elder statesman in the new assembly. He worked closely with humanity, advocating for reform within the remaining elder species governments. He never forgot the shame of what his people had done. He spent the rest of his life trying to make amends. We were arrogant, he admitted in his own memoirs. We believed our age made us wise. It did not. Wisdom comes from listening, learning, and admitting mistakes. The humans taught us that lesson. We should have learned it long ago. 50 years passed. The reformed Galactic Assembly thrived. Trade flowed freely between species. Wars became rare, then almost unknown. Children grew up never knowing the fear that their parents had lived with, on New Hope. A monument stood in the center of the rebuilt capital city. 240,000 names carved in black stone, surrounding a statue of a woman with outstretched arms. The statue represented humanity's promise. We remember. We protect. We forgive. A school group visited the monument on a spring morning. The children were a mix of species. Human children walked beside Rithani, Torvani, Bentari, and a dozen others. They had grown up together, played together, learned together. The old hatreds meant nothing to them. A young Rithani girl looked up at the statue. "Teacher," she asked, "why did the humans fight so hard?" The teacher was an old Rithani who had lived through the war. She remembered the fear, the shame, the terrible realization that her people had been wrong. She looked at the human children in her class. They were laughing and sharing food with their alien friends. They seemed so gentle, so kind because they were small, she answered finally, and we thought that made them weak. We learned that small creatures can have the largest hearts and the sharpest teeth. The girl looked at her human classmates. She could not imagine them as warriors. They were just her friends. That was exactly as humanity intended. The stars watched, as they always had. They watched children of different species play together without fear. They watched old enemies become new friends. They watched a galaxy that had nearly destroyed itself learn to live in peace. And somewhere, in a quiet garden on a distant colony world, an old admiral looked up at those same stars. He thought of all the friends he had lost. He thought of all the battles he had won. He thought of the young woman who had given everything so that others could live. "We did it, Youngji," Admiral Park Junho whispered to the night sky. "We built something worth fighting for." The stars had no answer, but somehow, in the silence, he felt that she knew. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, not through power alone, but through something the elder races had never understood, through hope. And hope, as it turned out, was the most dangerous weapon of all.